If I ask somebody to list computers from Commodore, the top 3 would be something like the C64, Amigas, and maybe Commodore PET or the C128. But it is not so common to hear anything about the Commodore PCs. Welcome everybody. In this video I try to talk a little bit about these forgotten PCs. I have 2 of them in front of me. The upper one is an XT clone and the other one is an IBM AT clone. As usual, let me start with the background history. In the C64 video I already mentioned the CBM2 series, which was a flop. After the failure of this series, Commodore required something for the European market. The leadership of Commodore was aware of this problem, so they started another project. It was called C900, which was a coherent-based, so kinda Unix-based computer, and it used the Zilog Z8000. Unfortunately, this project also failed. In 1984, the leadership of Commodore started to think about IBM compatibles. First of all, they made an agreement with Intel, so they had the license to produce the 8088 CPUs. Also, they had a contract to produce Hyperion. It was a portable, DOS-compatible machine. When I say DOS-compatible, it doesn't mean that it was compatible fully with the IBM PCs, but it was able to run a tailored MS-DOS version. Commodore had a big foothold, especially in West Germany, in this business computer market. So they required something to sell. That time Commodore operated as a holding. So there was the Commodore International in the US, and there were subsidiaries in Europe. One of these big affiliates was the factory in Braunschweig. The general manager of Commodore Germany's Braunschweig factory, Winry Hoffmann, seen an opportunity here. That time IBM focused mainly on the US market, and also the first wave of IBM clone makers didn't move to West Europe as well. So he gave the instruction to his engineers to design an IBM PC compatible machine. In late 1984, they released the Commodore PC10. Later on there were other versions like the PC1 and PC5. They were the early models. Those machines were able to continue the success of Commodore TET series. In the second half of 1985, Commodore was able to sell around 55,000 IBM PC compatibles. It gave Commodore a 35% market share in this area. They were bigger than IBM. I tried to collect more data, and this shows that Commodore was a major player, especially in Germany, on this IBM PC compatible market. In 1988, they captured something between 20 to 25% of this market. The machines in front of me are the redesigned versions of the first computers. They have multiple advantages. They are cost reduced, as usual for Commodore, and in the other hand, they are even faster. So let me open them and show you what is inside. This is the PC10. I've already removed all the screws, so I can remove the cover. But before that, I think it makes sense to check out the connectors. So on the right side, I have a reset button and the keyboard. It is very handy because it is easy to connect. And on the back side, okay, it is already off. So on the back side, I have a few more. There is a mouse. It is interesting because this computer is using the same connector as the Amiga. So I can connect here an Amiga mouse, and that way I can just use it. These are the video outputs. Since it has a kind of combo card or integrated card, almost everything is integrated. So the monitor output, it can be color or monochrome. In monochrome mode, it is a Hercules compatible card, or I can switch it to a CGA compatible. To be exact, it is a Plantronics compatible card, so it can output all the 16 colors at the same time in 320 by 200 resolution. So it has 2 times more memory as the CGA. Unfortunately, there is no real software support behind. It would make more sense to make it 10D compatible, but this is what we have here. And we have the serial and parallel ports. In an original IBM PC, all of them were a separated ISA card. So here, what I do have as an extra card is only a hard disk controller, and also I have an MFM hard drive connected to this one. So that's it. Let me dissect it a little bit more. I need to remove the front cover first. So it is off, and I can remove this sub-chassis. I can make it slowly, but first I need to disconnect the power. It is interesting because it is using its own standard, and I also need to remove the hard disk controller. So this is the MFM hard drive controller card. Okay, you can see all the bits and bolts. Let me show you what we have here. What we have here is the CPU, and there is a BIOS EPROM. The memory is located here on the left lower corner. This is the chipset and the socket for the FPU. On the right upper part, there is the video circuit. So there is its own BIOS and the controller, which is a Paradise PCV4. And that's it. This machine is not really exciting. There is one more extra, which is the RTC and its battery. As you can see here, I had to clean the motherboard a little bit because there was a battery leak. Somebody removed this battery earlier, but PCB was not really cleaned after that. So this fluid got rid of few traces. I had to repair them. As you can see, I repaired here, I also repaired here, and it was quite interesting because I also had to replace this IC. When I turned on this computer, there was nothing on the monitor at the beginning. Then I went for the traces. I spent some time to measure the connectivities between the ICs. I was not able to repair everything, so I added this jump cable here. I know it is not nice, but after a while it started to boot up, but there was a memory failure. The machine booted up only with 256K memory, while it has 640 kilobyte ROM. Here I have 256, another 256, and then 2 times 64. I studied the circuit and I got to the conclusion these ICs missing one signal, and then I traced it back to this IC. And finally, after I desoldered it and I replaced it with another one, I managed to boot it up with the full memory. What else can I tell you about this machine? It is not so exciting, it is just a PC. It is an XT compatible, but it is a bit spiced up. So the 640 kilobyte of memory is a kind of standard for these machines. It is also able to run on double speed, so it is possible to set the clock speed to the default 4.77 MHz. There's a turbo mode with 50% increase, and then there is the double mode when it is running almost at 10 MHz. In this mode, it is much faster than the original IBM XT. One more thing is coming into my mind. As you can see, it has an integrated floppy controller, but as well as it has a hard disk controller. But it requires hard drives with XT mode. So for example, this Western Digital hard drive. This one was the original hard drive for this machine, but unfortunately, this one is bad. So it is not working. This is why someone already installed the MFM hard drive, which is a standard Seagate ST225. Let me put it aside and switch over its brother, the one based on the 286 CPU. Okay, so here's the PC30-III. This is the 286. The house or the case is the same. I can dismantle the same way. If you find these machines familiar, there is no surprise. These are really a brother of the Amiga 2000. So if you have seen an Amiga 2000, well, these are coming from the same factory. The first Amiga 2000, the A model, was designed also in Germany by the same engineers. After I remove the cover, it is really similar to the other machine. The connectors and reset button are here. On the back I have the parallel port, the serial port. There is an audio output. They just they put a cover, a sticker on the video output and the mouse, and they put there the cover, so this sticker, because it has an EGA card. And I don't know why somebody installed this multi-IO card, and I put here one audio card, well, just for fun. So this is a 286. It can run also on double speed. So the original IBM 80 had 6 MHz clock speed, and it can run on 12 MHz. It has 1 MB of memory. The board layout is almost the same or very similar to the XT. I won't remove the PSU and all the rest. I have a lot of cables here connected to the motherboard. At the same point, somewhere here, I have the floppy controller with the connector and also the controller for the hard drive. I'm lucky because this one is a standard parallel ATA compatible, and it had the same problem as its older brother. It also had a Western Digital hard drive, but it was not an XT but an AT model. It was also a 20 MB hard drive. I replaced this one with a newer model. Somewhere in the past I got a box of hard drives. Thank you, Chirag. And I found their hard drive which fits this machine. Unfortunately, the BIOS of this machine is not very handy, so I was not able to set the parameters of the hard drive, but I was able to find a setting which reduced the capacity, so I can use only 100 MB from the 160, but it is still sufficient for this machine. There was one more issue with this machine. It was related again to the battery, but this model is using one of those Dallas chips. So these are the Dallas chips I'm talking about. These are the RTC, so the real-time clock chips. And these chips also store the BIOS settings, and somewhere in this plastic or under this plastic cover there is a battery. This machine cannot boot without this Dallas chip. Even if I set everything properly in the BIOS, it is not able to store it, so I had to do something there. There were two options. The first one is just to replace this Dallas chip, and the other one was a hack. I've seen somewhere in the past a solution how to remove this plastic from the Dallas chip, so I gave it a try. I know it is not nice, but sometimes I really enjoy such hacks. So let me summarize this machine. I had to replace the hard drive and also hack the Dallas chip, but otherwise this one is really a standard IBM 80 compatible machine. It has a 286 CPU running on 12 MHz, 1 MB of memory, and there is one extra, which is this sound card. I know it was not very common for the 286, but give it a try. But let's check out what we could do with these machines back in the late 80s and early 90s. Before Windows 95, it was the era of DOS. There were a few different variants like the MS-DOS and the PC-DOS, which was the IBM version of MS-DOS, and also Commodore licensed the MS-DOS. As you can see, the PC10 is booting a German version of MS-DOS 2.21. Or if you prefer it that way, we can call it 2.21. PC30 has a much advanced DOS. It is using MS-DOS 5.0. Few newer programs doesn't tolerate the old MS-DOS version, but I try to keep the old XT compatible as original as possible. As I listed the directories, I made an observation. Since I'm recording the screens of the monitors, so those are CRTs, it is really visible. These old CRT monitors have a heavy ghosting. It is not as bad as the first MDA monitors, but still, they have it. I use Checkit to compare the speed of the systems. If I use the PC10 on the original XT speed, and I set 4.77 MHz, it is exactly as fast as the original IBM XT. It was great back then because few programs had timing issues, and that way it was possible to slow down the computer to avoid such issues. When it is running on double speed, it is 2 times faster than the XT. But the 12 MHz 286 is 6.5 times faster than the original XT, which means the speed difference between the two Commodore machines is more than 3 times. And if we compare the video speed, we get almost the same result. It is interesting because the EGA card is just an 8-bit card, so I assume that the speed increase is a result of the faster CPU, especially its faster memory access. When I started to play around with the PC10, I really felt that it has a slow hard disk, and it is in line with the benchmark result. The transfer speed of the floppy drive in the same machine is theoretically 250 kilobits per second, which is translated somewhere between 20 to 25 kilobytes per second. So it means the old ST225 MFM hard drive is just 2.5 times faster. Its biggest advantage is that I can store 20 megabytes on it, and there is no need to swap the floppy disks. I almost said the modern hard drive in the 286. Today it is not modern, of course, but if I compare this old corner hard drive to the old Seagate, then it is around 5 times faster. But what I really like, it is not as noisy. The big old drive has its own squeaking sound. But let's step forward and check out a few tools. First of all, the DOS was not so friendly. We had to use different commands and type a lot, so instead of that, everybody used Norton Commander. It is a very nice and easy to use tool to navigate between directories, copy files, remove them, and also we could just hit the enter to start a program. There was also the Norton utility package. There were 2 programs we used a lot. One was to optimize the hard drive. Unfortunately, I forgot to record that, but I have the Norton Disk Doctor. We used it to check the file system consistency as well as to test the surface. We looked for bad records, especially on floppy disks, because if we stored files on a floppy disk with bad sectors, then it was common to lose data. If we tried to move a game from school to home, then we had to repeat it once more, which usually take another day or even more. I also installed Windows 3.1 on the 286 because my friend wrote his thesis on a similar machine. But to be honest, I forgot that it was that slow. Memories are coming slowly back into my mind, and really we spent a weekend to format the thesis. So yeah, it was that slow, just I really forgot that. But after this better memory, let's switch over to games. Prince of Persia is a great platform game, and it is really great to demonstrate why the PC10 was much better than the original IBM XT. On the left side you can see the standard speed, and on the right the double speed. If you compare how the game moves, then you can immediately see the difference. If you try to play the game, then the left one, so the slower one, is really sluggish, while the other one is, let's say, I do not say it is a rush, but it is okay. But if I put here the 286, then the difference is even bigger. Not just it is moving a little bit smoother, but what is even much more important, it can use 16 proper colors. When I say proper colors, just take a look at the CGA color palette. At IBM, I don't know who decided to use these colors, but I think he was colorblind or I don't know what, but they are really ugly. Blockout was one of our favorite games. We played it a lot. It is running pretty well on both machines, and the CGA in this case doesn't hurt that much. The coders made a very good job here, and they've added support for different display adapters. It was common back there to support the EGA and CGA, additionally maybe the Hercules, but this program supports 10D as well. I have similar memories from the test drive series. We played it a lot on different platforms. The PC was not my favorite because my father's Amiga was much better than the PCs I had access back then. Street Rod was another classic. It was unique because we had to pimp up the car, we had to buy a better car or a better engine, and then we went for racing. It was really a fun game. Unfortunately, I was not able to start it under DOS 2.11, so I can show you only the EGA version. Until this point the PC10 was able to run the games, but there was a point where the XT compatibles became obsolete. Wolf it was one of those games which required the faster CPU. It is starting on the PC10, but it is quite slow. And if someone had an adlib card, at least there were some music, unfortunately not during the gameplay, but between the different stages. Monkey Island was also similar. It is possible to play this game on an XT, but to enjoy this game you require at least an EGA card, and I also recommend the sound card. Just listen to the music, it takes no more than 20 seconds to understand what I'm talking about. Prehistoric was also similar in every aspect. It has much better graphics with the EGA card, and the sound card makes a real difference. And I think now I'm reaching the point where I can give you a verdict or a summary about these machines. I really like to restore and play with these machines. These machines are also made by Commodore, and I have a fond memory towards this company. But these are still not a C64 or an Amiga. I intentionally dropped the idea to compare them to an Amiga because I think it wouldn't be fair. These machines were designed for companies, and most of the time they were used to run business applications. It is obvious they would lose in every aspect if I start to compare them to an Amiga, especially if I use games. But on the other hand, they were very important in the life of Commodore. They helped the company to produce revenue when it was a must for them. Unfortunately, the successors of these machines were not fitting the market needs. There were multiple problems. First of all, Commodore was in a fallover mode. Yes, I know they were on the cheaper side, but after a while they had to compete with those Far East companies like Japanese and Koreans and Taiwanese. Somehow they missed the importance to make this PC line cheaper than the competitors. In the early 90s, Commodore step by step but lost its position on the business computer market. But I would like to close this video with something happy. I have 3 more games fitting the PC30 and the sound card. I hope you enjoyed this video. Join me for the next one. Goodbye.